former detective chief inspector who served with the Metropolitan Police. Peter, good morning. Thank you for joining me this morning. Firstly, should we be shocked by these warnings?
I'm absolutely not surprised at all. It's exactly what we've been predicting for some time. We've been told we've been crying wolf, and unfortunately the chiefs have been keeping their views to themselves until recently. We were told what we were saying wasn't happening, crime wasn't going up, and then we started seeing it creeping up, and now in most areas of crime it's rising quite significantly. The problem is, and it's the thing that Theresa May plainly didn't grasp right at the start, and I don't think grasps now, is that there's a time lag. If you change the funding of the police, you either reduce the funding for the police or you increase the funding police. There's a time lag before that finds its way, works its way through into crime figures. It isn't immediate in terms of its impact on the police budget. Police budgets are usually a year or two ahead. And then it doesn't happen just on day one of that year. It happens across that year, or sometimes across 2 or maybe even 3 years. And so the changes are steady. They don't happen with a big bang. The impact on the number of officers on the street, therefore, is a drip, drip, drip sort of effect, which takes time for people. The public notice steadily over time that there's fewer police around, and it works through their consciousness, and likewise the bad guys do. And then the bad guys go, not seeing many police around, what's happening? Oh no, you're right, there's not a lot around. Let's see what we can do. And they start committing more crime, and then that finds its way into the crime figures, and they push and push, and then we start seeing a rise in crime as the numbers go down, and the opposite will happen if and when, as will inevitably have to happen at some point, the cuts are reversed and police officer numbers are increased. Is that inevitable? Clearly you think it's desirable. I think a lot of people listening would imagine it to be desirable as well, but do you think it is inevitable that those cuts will be reversed? I really can't see people putting up with this for much longer. The public are now actually seeing what is going on and what we've been trying to warn them about for some time. The public are not seeing officers on their street. They're starting to take things into their own hands. They're seeing that people are asking them to pay for additional policing through councils or parish councils, or maybe even private companies offering additional policing services, because there are no police there on the street. They're seeing the clear-up rates going down. They're seeing crimes reported and no one coming to investigate them. They're seeing the response times to their calls steadily creeping up. It has got beyond the point where it can be hidden by glib statements from the government through the Home Office to the effect that the police have all the resources they need to deliver policing. They trot that out every single time, and it is simply a lie, and the public are seeing through that. Sooner or later, either this government will have to change its tune, or the people will demand a change of government. And so based on where we are just now, I mean, a whole variety of police forces right across the country: South Yorkshire, Avon and Somerset, Hertfordshire, Staffordshire, Suffolk, Cambridgeshire, a whole variety of different places across the country. In those areas, the police force is making these predictions that crime is going to rise. Some of the crimes, depressingly old-fashioned in a sense, child sexual exploitation. Some crimes, though, would not have been really on our radar 15, 20 years ago, cybercrime, for example. How much do you think, Peter, of this is down to the fact that we're talking about new crimes which simply didn't exist a number of years ago? It's down to both aspects. Theresa May misguidedly cut the police because she thought traditional crimes, for want of a better description, were falling, and therefore the police weren't needed. But of course she missed the point that crime wasn't going down overall, it was changing. And so instead of reducing police numbers needed to be redeployed, moved around, moved into the new areas of crime. As you say, the cybercrime thing has just exploded beyond all recognition. If we actually counted cybercrime properly, then the statistics would be terrifyingly high about how much crime there is right now. What do you mean by that? In what sense are we not counting cybercrimes correctly? Well, the vast majority of crimes committed over the internet involving property, they're frauds, and they're reported through the smoke and mirrors that is action fraud. People are referred to action fraud, which is the government's front for reporting fraud to the police service, which is effectively a call centre. They take the basic details, they're not police officers, they don't investigate, they simply record the information, and the idea is that that is then passed on to a fraud intelligence unit hosted by the City of London Police on behalf of all the forces in the country, and they then collate all this information, and if there is something that merits some police action, they farm it out to a police force to do that. However, they can only analyse the information that's got through action fraud, and I'm afraid my experience of action fraud is they do not take the full details, and so rubbish into the system means the analysis is rubbish. That means that links aren't made, and they can't tell forces to do things anyway. They can only send it out to them and say, we think you should do this.
Just a word, Peter, sorry to rush you there, Peter, just a word if you can on a not unrelated story. 1 million reported crimes being dropped with little investigation, sometimes with no investigation. The Channel 4 TV programme Dispatch is uncovering this. I suppose this fits with the idea, I guess, that there aren't enough police and they aren't funded properly.
Exactly. I love the way that programmes like Dispatches claim they're uncovering this. All they needed to do was to listen to what I and others have been saying for the last 5 or 8 years to know exactly what's going to be happening. If you've got fewer police officers, you've got fewer officers that can be investigating stuff, they've got fewer hours to do it, therefore there's fewer opportunities to do investigation, therefore fewer of the crimes reported can actually be further investigated. It's a bit of a misnomer saying they're not investigated at all, because they're all investigated to a certain level, a basic level, by the initial report and an investigating officer. But there are undoubtedly cases now getting screened out because there's too few investigating officers that could have had lines of inquiry that may have resulted in people getting nicked. So the bad guys are getting away with it, the victims aren't getting the service they deserve, and all because the police simply haven't got enough investigating officers, and therefore they have to start with the most serious and work their way down the pile as far as they can get, and unfortunately that is getting less and less far down the pile.
Peter, thank you so much for that. Peter Kirk.